So good afternoon. We are ready for our today's webinar.
Yeah, good afternoon.
I am Bhupen Chutia, coordinator of IQAC. We were very much encouraged when we found that there were 590 registered participants who actually registered for this webinar.
Wow, that's amazing.
I don't know how many will turn up today. Perhaps there were, we try to communicate, we try to mail to all participants our ID and password, but some of the emails failed.
Okay.
Some of the emails I couldn't send to all. Still, I tried to even send a personally some messages, SMS. Anyway, it is about 2:50. We can start, and I would like to request our honorable principal sir, Dr. Surajit Bhuya sir, who is among us, to inaugurate this 12th lecture of this series. We have been organizing so many webinars. We had a kind of a plan to invite experts from various fields, from science, from science writers. And today, of course, we are going to have another side of this academic world, that is copy editing. And at the beginning, I would like to request our honorable principal sir to inaugurate this webinar.
A very good afternoon to everybody. At the beginning, I would like to welcome you all to this webinar organized by IQAC Girls College in association with Department of English of this college. As Dr. Sutia said, this is lecture number 11 of this webinar series organized by this college. And today we have with us Ratul Hazarika and Anannya Borgohain from Mumbai, and they will speak on a career option, copy editing in scholarly publications. Ratul and Anannya are two very dedicated professional copy editors, and today they will introduce us to this promising career option. I know them personally since year 2000, and I know how much they are devoted to their work. Due to their sincerity and dedication to their profession, now getting tremendous success in this field, and in fact, they are now in a greater height. I think all the participants will be benefited from this webinar, and they will see an opportunity for themselves in this field. As Ratul said to me yesterday, they are very much eager to help you all, but you need to have your quality and dedication. I offer my sincere thanks to Ratul and Anannya for giving your valuable time with us despite of your heavy workload. I thank IQAC and Department of English for organizing this, and with these few words, I declare this session open. Thank you.
Thank you, Principal Sir, for inaugurating this webinar today. Now, I would like to introduce you. I would like to introduce our two speakers today. I would like to introduce to the participants. Ratul Hazarika and Anannya Borgohain, and they in fact husband and wife, and they have been doing a tremendous job in a kind of work and a kind of profession that very few of us can even dream of. That is working from home. You know, for the last 20 years, Ratul sir has been working as a copy editor, freelance copy editor. That is not going to the office daily. He doesn't need to go to any office on a regular basis. He works from home. He stays at home. And in 2005, Anannya also joined him in the same profession, and now they are doing kind of very successfully doing it. And they thought that well, during this lockdown period, they thought of sharing with our people, our participants, their experiences and how they want to share with our participants how they can even choose for this particular profession. And this is really an attractive profession. And here they have two aims here. First, to introduce us to this world of editing, copy editing, and secondly, they also have a plan of employing some select participants who would be really interested, who would be capable of handling copy editing, and they will be very much interested in getting some positive responses from our participants. So I would like to request all our participants to listen to them carefully and to follow their other steps so that they can keep communicating with them. I have one more request to all our participants. They will have to respond to a kind of feedback form we will be providing shortly after the end of this session, and then only they will get some certificate of participation. This one. Now I would like to request our Honorable Ratul Hazarika and Anannya Borgohain to start the session. Over to you, our
Thank
special
you.
guest.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And namaskar, everyone. Thank you so much for your kind words, both Dr. Bhuya, Principal, and Dr. Sutia. And I would also like to take the name of other people who have been organizing this. Sri Upen Pujari, the Vice Principal, and the other faculty members who have joined us today. And of course, all the other participants of this webinar, especially the tech support also. And this has been a beautiful endeavor on your part to organize this in these times. So we hope we will try to explain the different aspects of copy editing and how somebody can choose this as a profession. So we hope we are able to explain the stuff that you might be curious about this field. So we should probably start sharing the screen right away so that things are more clearer. So the first slide says copy editing, a profession for those who love language and science. So this is about as much about science as it is about language. So of course, language comes first. But then again, because we are dealing with scholarly publication, so a general understanding of science terms and some level of comprehension that you need to understand scholarly literature. So that will be needed. Which one can develop over time by reading some standard literature on a regular basis. So I'll be giving a lot of advice to the students. So people who are not students and their own accomplished professionals of their own. So please don't feel offended because I might be sounding like, too preachy at times. So, okay, the next slide is copy editing of scholarly literature. This is basically what we do. The sub-specialization of copy editing. And the subjects we deal with are science, technology, engineering, medical, and humanities. So these days, mostly we are dealing with life sciences and medical and social sciences. But otherwise, earlier in our career, we also did maths, some engineering related stuff. So what copy editors do, so Ananya will, okay. So what copy editors do, basically, copy editors will serve the need of three constituencies. First come the authors, the person or people who wrote or compiled the manuscript. Then comes the publisher, the person or company that is paying the cost of producing the printed material. And then come the readers, the people for whom the material is being produced. So all these parties share one basic desire, an error-free publication. So basically, when the reader is reading a text and he wants it to be error-free, and so keeping error almost zero to a level almost like zero. If you're reading a prestigious material, you'll never find any typos or other missing stuff and all. So that kind of level of editing is expected. Then about our field, ours in scholarly publication, when you're working as a copy editor for scholarly literature, so there are some 4 basic commandments that we would follow. So you are not expected to be perfect though. So it says every copy editor misses errors here and there, but do respect the 4 commandments of copy editing. So the first is thou shalt not lose or damage part of a manuscript, something that author has taken great pains to compile and read and write over a long period of time. A lot of hard work is there and a lot of love also. So one cannot be very lackadaisical and just lose a page here. It's talking about hard copy days, from the hard copy days, but it can well be deleting some portions by mistake, or when you're copying something, then you might delete something by error. So one has to be very careful about that. Can you see the slide now, the 4 commandments of copy editing?
Yes.
Okay. So the next point is like, thou shalt not introduce an error into a text that is correct. As in other areas of life, in copy editing, an act of commission is more serious than an act of omission. So this reminds me of an incident in the company that we were working earlier in the beginning of our career. So once our managers and our CEO went to a publisher in US and they got this new project, and then the first few sample files that we sent, there were some new people working also, and some files went without checking by the seniors, and there were a lot of errors introduced. So immediately we lost that client because his main grudge was that it was not the number of errors, but it was the nature of the errors. So the kind of errors that were introduced, they just lost confidence in us. They could not give us more work seeing those errors. So this is about that. And then thou shalt not, the 3rd commandment, thou shalt not inadvertently change the author's meaning. So when we are reading a sentence, especially in scholarly literature, some of the thoughts can be very complex. And as a copy editor, you cannot be an expert in every field, and because it's all postdoctoral research, so the language is complex, the thoughts are complex. So you have to maybe read a sentence twice, sometimes thrice, to make sure that what the author has written is not wrong as given. So only then you make a change. And then if you think that your change has actually altered the meaning, you have to make sure that you have added a comment there for the author to check that, I felt that this is what you meant. Is the original sense retained in the edits? If not, we can state the change. So that is one approach that we have to be very careful about. Then the 4th one is that thou shalt not miss a critical deadline. I really struggled with that, like both of us, because of our own slightly slack timings and all. So, but that is very important. One should not miss the deadlines, because you have this whole process where it has to go to typesetting, and the authors are also waiting for their proofs. So this the time research is published also is very crucial. So the 4th amendment is again equally crucial. Sorry, I happen to no. Yeah. So the first part of editing is like what we call mechanical editing. So that is making a manuscript conform to an editorial style. So what an editorial style is, this is basically every house, every in-house, suppose you talk about Sage Publications or you talk about Elsevier, these are like some major scholarly publishers, even Springer and all. So they all have their in-house, what they call an in-house style. Like they would say that a certain term has to go in capital or whether it should go in lowercase, or how headings are set, and even hyphenation. Sometimes they will say fractions are always hyphenated in a certain style. Another style will say that the fractions should not take a hyphen. They should be set as two words. So a lot of these details are there. And sometimes we will say that a book title, when you're writing about a book in a text, then that has to be set in italic to separate it from the other part of the text. But New York Times uses quotation marks for a book title. It does not use italic for that. So this is again like, you know, the in-house style. So this is something that the copy has to make sure has been followed diligently, so that for that publisher, when a reader picks up any book or journal from the publisher, they'll see these elements treated consistently across publications. So this is something that when somebody is new in the profession, they don't like to take seriously because it's a lot of hard work, and they think that, you know, I'm good enough. I should be allowed to simply go ahead and make changes wherever there are errors, what I feel is wrong, rather than taking care of so many, you know, small details. But that is not the approach that is acceptable. So I'll go to the next. So the next slide says, nothing mechanical about it though. So mechanical editing comprises all editorial interventions made to ensure conformity to house style. There is nothing mechanical, however, about mechanical editing. It requires a sharp eye, a solid grasp of a wide range of conventions, and a good judgment. So suppose if I am editing medical literature, I would have been using the AMA manual, that is the American Medical Association manual, for many years, to be able to, you know, approach a client to ask for work that uses that manual. So there will be 100 different things in different areas, like be it statistics, be it reference related, or be it usage. Suppose, and then comes sexism in usage, racial terms, how to deal with, you know, racial bias and stuff like that. So all of these different areas, you have to know by heart for a certain style, for a certain manual. So these are called conventions, and then you have to have a sharp eye to be able to catch those, and that comes with experience. And then lastly would come good judgment. So sometimes you don't just enforce a rule, because if you look at the usage, the author's usage might be a little special in this case. So you cannot, otherwise, if you did not need a human judgment, most of these things would have been taken care of by artificial intelligence in this day. But we still need that human intervention just because of that, for that good judgment that you need. So which comes from, again, you know, experience. And then experience, again, one more important thing is that when we are working, we must make sure that every time we are reading material, you know, reading all these manuals and again some good standard literature, so that we develop this good judgment. I hope I'm not too fast, because there's a lot of you know, areas to cover. So I am speaking a little fast, but I think a lot of people watch American movies and English movies all the time nowadays on Netflix, all the youngsters. So I hope they don't have any trouble following my lecture. Can we, are we getting any feedback from the students who have joined us? Is anybody having any trouble, like, you know, following me? I hope not. So next comes correlating parts. So in the correlating part of the work, what we need to do is you have references where you cite certain journals or book articles based on which you have done your research. So you will need to suppose the author has presents an argument, and then to bolster his argument, he will cite some work. some earlier research. So what we need to do is to check that, okay, the names he has given of these books, whether he has given us all the details, the publisher name, the year that certain book was published, the title of the book, and unless all the details are present, the reader will not be able to check the original source. And if the reader is not able to check the original source, the argument of the author will not hold water. Basically, the value of the argument there won't be any value basically to what he's trying to say, unless all the readers can access every references that he cited. So this is a part of the correlation that we need to check, the references that are cited in the paper versus those, all the details that are provided at the end of the article. Then if the article uses footnotes, endnotes, like there will be notes at the end of an article, and then there will be either numbers, or the article might be at the bottom of the page or the end of the article, and where it ends. So even in the tables and all, so we need to cross-check whether a number is there for a footnote, but the footnote is missing. So that means something is half explained, because he was trying to say something, and the explanation he had put at the end of the article, but that explanation is missing now. So sometimes during the process, when the files are processed, sometimes some parts might get lost. So we need to cross-check that all things are there. Then the tables and illustrations in scientific articles, it's very important that if a author has cited, like he's discussing a certain table, so it has to be placed in the right place. It cannot say table 1 here and then the table 1 is missing there. So the reader is going to find it very troublesome to keep flipping through the pages trying to locate the table. If the table is wrongly numbered or something, then it will be difficult for the reader to understand. So these are again the table of contents, which could be at the beginning of a book. And then, so basically these are elements which would be discussed in a certain portion of the main text when you're reading the explanation, the hypothesis, or maybe discussing the results of the study. So these are areas where they would be referring to tables, or they would be referring to some other bibliographic material. So other references, prior works. So these needs to be checked that all of it is present. So then comes the language editing. After you've taken care of, we've taken care of the mechanical part, and then the correlation, whether everything is present, all the elements. Then we start with the language editing of a manuscript. So copy editors also correct or ask the author to correct errors or lapses in grammar, syntax, usage, and diction. So ideally, copy editors set right whatever is incorrect, unidiomatic, confusing, ambiguous, or inappropriate, without attempting to impose their stylistic preferences or prejudices on the author. So this is again, what comes through judgment. There's something that is clearly wrong when it comes to editing a non-native author. Suppose if I'm editing somebody from India or China, then or from Iran. I mean, for people for whom English is not the first language, the errors are quite obvious at times. So it is easier to correct. You know that, okay, this is what is wrong, and you can set right easily. But sometimes the errors might not be easy, might not be clear. So if there is a chance that what your change that you're making for the sake of correct grammar is also altering the meaning, you must be aware of that, trying to see that none of your changes also alters the meaning. So the rules for language editing are far more subjective than those for mechanical editing. Most copy editors come to trust a small set of...
Excuse me.
Yeah. Yes.
Can you put it in slideshow? Right?
Okay.
So I was in the sentence, like most copy editors come to trust a small set of usage books and then to rely on their own judgment when the books fail to eliminate a particular issue or offer conflicting recommendations. So basically, this is where judgment comes into place, and this is what experience will, like, this is what you gain through experience. Okay, now the problem is I'm having trouble scrolling. Okay, no, that's fine. So the next part is, again, we need to verify the copyright permissions also, because a lot of authors might assume that because he has taken something from public domain, suppose from a government agency, some data, then that might not need a copyright permission, but he can be in trouble later on if, and in fact, the publisher might be taken to task for publishing something that for which the copyright permission is missing. So we need to identify such areas, and then ask the author to get in touch with the production team in the publishing house to verify whether what he has taken from that third-party source does not need any permission, special permission from the copyright owner. Then we have what we call type coding. So type coding is basically, because the copy editing stage is the last stage of the editorial kind of view that this manuscript gets. So after that, it's all going to go to the typesetter, who is only concerned about setting the page, the text, the figures, the tables, and arranging the separate pages, and then compiling the book or journal article. So in order to make the text more comprehensible, we need to identify which one is a level 1 head, which one is a level 2 head. So this kind of identification is called type coding. Basically, we might use some electronic coding in a template, or we can just type in, key in on the electronic copy, like in MS Word, that this is H1 or H2. We use some kind of codes like that. So that is called type coding. So what copy editors do not do. So I'll need to enlarge this. Maybe I'll read it from my book here. I'm sorry about the slides. These look more like some archaeological scrolls. It's very, this was the best I could do in my limited time. So I just tried to, find some relevant portions of the text and take photos and post it there. So what copy editors do not do is, number one is, copy editors are not proofreaders. So although many copy editors are good proofreaders, and all copy editors are expected to catch typographical errors, copy editing and proofreading are two different functions. Copy editors work on an author's manuscript and are concerned with imposing mechanical consistency, correcting infelicities of grammar, usage, and diction, and querying internal inconsistencies of fact or tone. Proofreaders, in contrast, are charged with correcting errors introduced during the typesetting, formatting, or file conversion of the final document, and with identifying any serious errors that were not caught during copy editing. So basically, a lot of times what happens is, something that happened recently was a figure got interchanged. I was doing a book on oncology, and in one chapter, and every chapter was like 100+ pages. So basically, it would take several hours to complete one chapter. And this chapter had about 20 plus 24 or 25 figures. So I had once copy edited all the figures where you look for typos and whether they are all correctly placed, whether they are matching with the legends, what is explained in the legends. So the figure legends, that is. So that set I had sent to the client once, and then they sent me another set after about 2 weeks, when the figures were redone. So I assumed that at least it was like new only in terms of the resolution, not in any other sense. So I did not realize that I might need to again cross-check the figures with the legends. So as it turned out, in the final stage, somebody got back to me saying that figure 5 and 6 were interchanged in the last phase. So basically, the people who were working on the graphics team, they committed this error, but it was actually me who was supposed to check that. So even if it was in the second stage, so sometimes these kind of things happen, and so this is what proofreaders are supposed to catch.
Copy editors are not rewriters, ghostwriters, or substantive editors. Although copy editors are expected to make simple revisions to smooth awkward passages, copy editors do not have license to rewrite a text line by line. Making such wholesale revisions to the text is called substantive editing or content editing.
So, and this is the second point. And then the third point is like...
Copy editors are not developmental editors.
That's again a different profession. It's called developmental editing. So
copy editors are expected to query structural and organizational problems, but they are not expected to fix these problems. Reorganizing or restructuring a manuscript is called developmental editing. Copy editors are not publication designers. Copy editors are expected to point out any item in the manuscript that may cause difficulties during production. For example, a table that seems too wide to fit on a typeset page. But copy editors are not responsible for making decisions about the physical appearance of the publication. All physical specifications, typefaces, page layout, the formatting of tables, the typographical treatment of titles and headings and so on are set by the publication's designer or by someone wearing the designer's hat.
Yeah, so this is about, some of the macro stuff that is actually taken care of some specialist people in the production team, which happens after the copy editing bit. So copy editing, we are looking at more micro level stuff. And then after the page is set, so it is a responsibility of somebody at the typesetter to take care of those changes. Then
now, levels of copy editing.
Yeah, the next
slide is about levels of copy editing.
First, so okay, I'll make it slightly concise so that we don't waste, so that it doesn't take too long. So basically, levels of copy editing, we have three. Generally, the terms people would use is light, medium, and heavy. So light medium is basically level of copy editing. So the publisher is basically the one who is going to decide what level of copy editing a certain text is going to need. So it will depend on the author's reputation, the kind of work. So somebody at the publisher will review the work and then let us know what kind of, what level of editing is required. So it might be, so yeah, this is, I think, going into too much detail, so we can omit this, I think. So basically they are like defined levels. So it will depend on the quality of the author's writing, the intended audience, the schedule and budget, the author's reputation, like I said, and the size of the final print run, and the importance of the publication to the publisher. So this is all, what will dictate what level of editing the publisher will ask us to do. So now, depending on that, like the next slide we are presenting is the minimal task list. So irrespective of the level of editing, there are certain minimal things that a copy editor is expected to take care of. So the list of priorities depends on the project, of course, but for most projects, a minimal task list would include attending to those errors that would be most embarrassing to the publisher and those that would be most confusing to readers. So thus the copy editor would correct spelling errors, serious grammatical errors, faulty, for example, faulty subject-verb agreement, and egregious punctuation errors, query factual inconsistencies. If somebody says, talking about the Vietnam War, if somebody says it had it was one of the greatest war in America or something, so they will say, no, it was actually not, it did not actually take place in America. So that phrasing needs to be changed. So something factual, something like that, of that sort. So, and make sure all abbreviations and acronyms are defined. A lot of times, because authors are, very, like, they study a lot in their field. So they are so used to the acronyms and other jargon in their field that they would assume that every reader that picks up the material to read will be well versed with that those abbreviations. But usually the case is not so, because some of them might be new students, and then in certain regions of the world, those abbreviations might not be that much in use. So we always need to make sure that the abbreviation, when it appears at at first place, needs to be spelled out. And then there are certain styles, like the AMA style, the American Medical Association style, says unless an abbreviation is used for 3 times in a short article also, only then you can use the abbreviation. Otherwise, you have to spell it out. So these are like in-house styles or that kind of stuff. So list pages containing material for which permission to reprint is required. So that is again the copyright related issue. Then carefully read the title page, copyright page, and contents page. So because there are certain areas that are like, bigger in print and they're very prominent and they might be reused again and again. So these areas are considered, we call them like zero error areas in our course of work. So these areas have to be error free. They're like unpardonable if you allow errors there. And then again, lastly would come the checking the numbering of footnotes, tables, and figures. So these again, the ones we discussed earlier about the correlating bit. So that's that area. Then the last, I've just, the bottom part of the slide is what is important. It says like, don't rewrite an author's sentences because it is not the sentence you would have written. So for a copy editor, it can, especially a novice copy editor, it can be difficult to, the final sentence would read as, it's difficult to resist the temptation to improve someone else's writing. So basically, when you know that there is a better way of expressing something and you have the authority to make changes, so you might be tempted to actually make it better. But if the author has written it a certain way and it's not grammatically incorrect, then his way of thought should be honored, and you should just let that stand. You must not change it as a copy editor. So if you were a developmental copy editor, maybe, then you would have probably written to the author that this is not sounding good, let us change it that way, do we want it that way? But it all depends on the timeline and the liberty or the requirement of the project itself. So now we will discuss about, in the beginning I said, like we mentioned about this connection between language and science in scholarly publication. So we talked how love for science as well as language is what you need to work to enjoy your work in scholarly publication, basically. So these few slides I've taken from a book by an authority on scientific writing. So he writes books on how scientists should write, basically. So what approach scientists should take. So he talks about universality of English. So English is not just the international language of science. English is becoming the international language of business and computer. And he's saying the world is getting smaller indeed, and English is becoming the international language. Any final resistance to this trend will be wiped out by the economics of the computer. Computer software and documentation are expensive, and duplication in different languages is often prohibitive. Thus, as computers become ubiquitous, the Tower of Babel will be replaced by English-speaking control towers. So basically, as we have already witnessed now, because this book is probably a decade old, so with the spread of the internet and all, so English has become very important. It's not that you have to, the accent and everything is not important at all, which it never was, but the language itself and the expression is, it's a practical thing to learn and to use. So. So this slide says, so if I'll just read bits of it, not the whole one. So the first sentence, so if English is now the international universal language, what does this mean to scientists? Broadly, it means that scientists must use English with precision. So later in the paragraph it says, just as modern scientists must learn the intricacies of increasingly complicated laboratory equipment and experimental protocols, they must also learn to weigh out their words in English with the same precision they must use to weigh out their reagents in their laboratories. So this is what respect they should give to the language also. I mean, they should take as much interest in the language as well. So scientists and perhaps scholars in all fields should learn to use English simply. Short, simple words in short, straightforward sentences usually convey meaning more clearly than do esoteric words and convoluted sentences. So he says then that we are the first generation in the history of the world to use English as the international language of science. However, most people of this generation grew up using a language other than English, like we, for instance. So therefore, as most of our colleagues around the world are struggling to master this language we call English, we should all do whatever we can to write clearly and simply. Language, like science itself, can lead to confusion when we are not careful. And this is very important. Even now we are witnessing in days of the present crisis of the COVID-19. A lot of miscommunication is happening. Like the WHO did not come out with clear instructions in the beginning, and then a certain paper was not accepted because it was a case report, and then it did not carry as much evidential weight. It was not really evidence-based according to some experts, but actually that warning should have been taken, and then which would have saved a lot of lives. There was an interesting story in the New York Times last month about this. So I'm going to email that to your coordinators, so people who are interested can share that. The principles of scientific writing. Sorry, I'm just slowing down a little, but guiding principles. Yeah, here it is. So the principles of scientific writing derive from the purposes of scientific writing, basically. So the basic purposes of scientific publications are: number one, to record the archival function of our research journals. Number two, to inform peers, people in your same profession. Like if you're a physics scholar, then you would want physics scholars from all over the world, whether English is their first language or not, to understand your thesis, your paper properly. And third is to educate the next generation of scientists. So as important as the archival use is, like, it will remain in a library for years to come. So you should make sense to a later generation of scholars as well. So this is the audience that scientists primarily write for. So the jargon and unexplained abbreviations should be avoided. Then doubtless a great many bad, incomprehensible papers that appear in our journals are bad because the authors ignored the archival and student audiences for their papers and wrote in an arcane shorthand of laboratory jargon. So moreover, scientists sometimes go out of their way to flaunt this jargon, and they often combine their jargon with an incredibly verbose style that leads to confusion. So too many scientists and perhaps members of all professions want to sound scholarly. Therefore, some dress up a simple thought in an outrageous costume. Sometimes the thread of the idea gets lost along the way, and all we see is the frayed costume. So he's very critical about using complex sentences and complex words and all. So Robert Day, it's a very interesting book. I'll just show you the title. It's available. I think ebooks also will be available, and you can easily access. I think I'll give a list of the books I can email later on to your coordinator so you can share. This is a very Robert A. Day. It's called Scientific English. And then he talks about literary versus scientific English. So this is again, I wanted to read this out to Dr. Sutia actually, because he's a HOD of English. So for them, there's some kind of a connection between science and English. That connection is what he's trying to talk about here. So does this mean that scientific writing must be dull? So a clear sequence of exciting new information can be fascinating. Dullness can result when writers give up the pretty ornaments of literary writing. However, if clarity is increased, the reader may enjoy the comprehension and not notice the loss of ornaments. In writing, as in the make of jewelry, true elegance often results from the simple rather than the ornate. So this is what he's talking about, that it's not necessary that something will be interesting only if you use tough words or tough sentences. It can be as interesting in if you use some simple words in simple sentences also. So I think the next slide. So yeah, a fundamental difference between literary writing and scientific writing was well stated by the novelist John Fowles, that the quote that I have highlighted in the slide: "For what good science tries to eliminate, good art seeks to provoke mystery, which is lethal to the one and vital to the other." So for good literature, we are dealing with a lot of mystery and all, but for science, we are actually trying to negate that. So that kind of balance. So there are some examples of the grammar that we deal with, which is like when we learn grammar in school, we learn just the rules initially. So now as you start to use that grammar, you learn that there is two types that you need to understand. One is called the prescriptive, which is a prescription kind of thing, a rule-based, and then is the descriptive one. That sometimes the meaning will tell you that you cannot apply the rule there. If you apply the rule, the meaning will change. So here, this example is like a bunch of grapes is on the table and a bunch of apples are on the table. So both are introduced by this word bunch. So grammar will tell you that bunch should always take is, but actually when it comes to apples, because it's not a connected unit, it has to be are. So that is like a bunch of apples are and a bunch of grapes is. So the style of writing of Robert Day is like, he would say, my point is that a milligram of logic is grammatically more weightier than a kilogram of rules. And then another common error we generally commit is the couple owns a condominium. It's like a house, a flat or something. So the couple owns, that is a singular verb, and it's, because the couple collectively own it. So it's the couple owns a condominium. But when the couple separate, or when, it's an action that is happening separately, so you would say the couple do not live together. So then you use the plural verb. Then the next sentence is the committee of scientists were from several scientific disciplines. So here the committee of is might be considered singular, but when you're talking about several disciplines and all, so this is actually individual based. So this is again plural. So this is what descriptive grammar is about. So this is the kind of grammar that we read and study again once we start editing. And there is some funny example here which says, like, talks about dangling modifiers. Like when you have some adverbial phrase or some descriptive thing, and then it is immediately followed by a certain phrase, but actually it is not directly modifying that phrase. So while having lunch, the reaction mixture exploded. The example says so, but obviously the reaction mixture was not having lunch. So presumably a scientist or a student or somebody was having lunch. So that's why this sentence should be modified, that the reaction mixture exploded while the students were having lunch or something of that sort. So this is called the dangling. These are like some subtle errors which are made by native speakers. It's called a dangling modifier. Then you will see a picture which is actually not part of this is no. I wanted to show you this picture because I remember I follow somebody called Dilliwala, who's a journalist based in. Okay, now in this view it's not showing. Anyway, I'll tell you this. So I remember this. He's a very hardcore literature fan, and he writes very good captions, and he's very active on Twitter and Instagram, and I usually follow him on Flickr because the picture shows in a larger. He's very much into reading. Always he's reading books, so he writes some very interesting captions, and I remember this picture from a long time. So for this presentation, I kept searching for it, and then I finally found it. So the caption of this picture is, "Lukma, the pesky copy editor shooed away all my precious commas." So the way the birds are flying, he interpreted it as, the copy editor driving away the commas from his article. So this is just the last bit of our copy editing presentation. And then since we started freelancing, we have been working for Elsevier. So we went to the Elsevier office in 2017. This is a picture with our general manager in Philadelphia office. No, yeah, we did not take any picture inside the office because people were working and it did not feel comfortable taking pictures there. And he's Mr. Richard Adam. He's almost like a mentor. He's been copywriting for more than 30 plus years. He looks like a senior citizen, but he's very, very tech savvy. So he will show you other pictures also of his workstation. And he actually develops some editing tools also. So he knows all about, the workings of Word, how Word works, and MS Word basically. So
I've been working with him since 2007.
Yeah, we've been working since 2007. Generally he gives me book projects. So these medical books, they are like very big, some 3,000-4,000 pages. So usually we are 2-3 different editors who work for me. So I'm the one from India, and usually there are 1 or 2 from US who work with him. Then this is the ideal setup for freelancing. The one on left on top, you will see the 3 monitors, and the middle one, which is slightly vertical, it's arranged like that, is where the document he opens. This is he has devised all these tools in his website, where we have what we call a style sheet. We share that style sheet, which is live. If I make a change in the style sheet, I'll add some words, some hyphenation terms. So another copy editor who is working in the US will be accessing it live, and you can see that this is much more, earlier than Google spreadsheet and all that has come now into the market. But otherwise, he has been using it for a long time. Yeah. I don't know, those slides, I think we've missed it.
What is style sheet?
No, we have missed that style, so I'm not discussing that. So this is his workstation. So we were there at his place for some time, but he did not want to waste that time even. So he was explaining me something about editing. So he took me upstairs to his editorial room. And this is his wife. She's a accomplished professional artist. So half of their home, the top floor is like half of his office, which is the editing, where he does editing and all his books and his computer. And the other half is her studio. She's a painter, a professional painter. This was at Sage office in California. So we have been working for Sage. These are we get to do some social sciences for them. So they have some very interesting titles. It's a very good to read. We have been working for them since 2007. Yeah. Then while we were there, yeah, this is their office, and on top, and then they made us do a small video of ourselves where we talked about freelancing, how life is like as a freelancer based in India. In fact, for Sage Publications and Elsevier, we were the first Indian individuals who work on an individual basis, that is. They have some companies that work for them, but we were the first individual freelancers from India. And then they took us to lunch.
Certainly, Vaidya. Any questions?
Okay, so we will end this session in the sense that we will take questions now, I think, and I'll stop the slide so we can see the other participants, the coordinator.
Thank you, sir, and madam.
Yeah, thank you so much.
For this informative session. And I hope most of our participants, they are in fact waiting to ask some questions.
Yes, yes.
Technical questions.
Yes.
And before allowing other participants, may I ask a few questions?
Yes, yes, yes. Sure.
We have talked about the language rules.
Yes.
Side, right?
Yes.
To write scientific paper and all those small bits like your grammar, etc.
Yes.
etc.
Yes.
And then you talk about the science of writing and publishing, or rather the business of publishing.
Yes.
So that there's a huge industry of publishing academic writings.
Yes.
How do these people do? You know, so many of us are writing, contributing.
Yes.
Our papers get rejected or rather get edited.
Yes.
How, as an insider,
Yes.
can you please give some kind of a more illumination about this particular business? Yeah, and then
Which aspect of the business? You mean the editing part?
yeah, that is basically when we send the paper,
Yes.
and then sometimes we get rejected, or
Yes.
sometimes we get a kind of something kind of revision.
Yes.
In between this process, what's your role? How do you do that? Or I want to know, just know the entire process.
Okay.
How the publishing house communicate you as a freelancer.
Yeah.
Editor.
So yeah, basically what happens is once you submit a paper for publication, it will go to the peer reviewers, basically the anonymous reviewers that review your paper, the peer reviewers. So at the peer review stage, that is before it gets to us, basically. Once the peer review stage is complete, and if they have, if they want to ask you for revisions, then they will contact you and take your revisions, and then based on your revisions, they are going to either accept or reject your paper. So that is all dependent on the peer review, process. So only when the peer review process is clear and your article is accepted for publication, only then it will come to the production team. So we are where the production starts, like just next to the peer review stage.
How do they contact
So-
us as a freelancer?
So as a freelancers, we are already, in the panel of certain journals. So about 6-7 social science journals, about I think four medical journals. So whenever there's an article, it automatically comes to us because it's like an automated system. And once it is assigned to me, I would be returning the copy edited file in about 4 or 5, supposedly 4 or 5 days, maybe a week's time.
Well, of course, it is nice. Well, if somebody, some of the
Yes.
participants want to join this job, whether
Yes.
do this particular profession,
Yes.
how do they prepare themselves, not only technically, how do they get themselves empaneled? How do they approach those houses? I mean,
Publishing houses.
Yes.
Yeah.
How our participants would like to know that.
Actually, what I have come to realize is when I compare, when I interact with US-based editors and all, they do a lot of research right from their school days in the US. So they are used to, doing a lot of documentation work and other editing work, and also some kind of rudimentary knowledge is there in the US schools and even in the colleges, of course, in the colleges. So, but for us, we rarely write papers in school or even in college. So those basic skills are missing here in India. So you must, work under somebody or in an office because in an office you have a team of editors, so every day you will be consulting, asking your colleagues and then reading books, and all the material would be there. So it is easier to learn in an office. Otherwise, if you really want to do it and you're really studious kind of a person who knows that I'm going to do it, and it takes it as a challenge. And then there is all these different materials, and nowadays you can access different kind of societies. So you can become a member of some editorial society, and then you can try to chat with those people about your doubts and what are the stuff you need to read. So over time you might be able to do it, but that is a little steep. Even under direct mentorship, also it is a little steep, the learning curve. But it is a little challenging in India because we don't do a lot of research as students, basically.
We started like test.
Yeah, and when we got our job, freelance opportunities, we had already a profile of suppose we in the office we had experience of working on several different journals over a long period of time. So that could amount to probably a few thousand articles, and then apart from that, some good, like I had worked on an encyclopedia once before in my office. So encyclopedia kind of stuff is like, little more serious editing because it has to be very, very error free. So that kind of profile, with that kind of profile, we approached these publishers. So then, because they were in need of, editors that time, so they tried to, they sort of trying us out basically. So they gave us tests. So they all have their own in-house tests.
Some houses have tests and some see your profile.
Just your sample
of work profile, and some offer you some test. You have to clear those tests.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Ma'am.
Yeah, please tell me. I can hear. Yeah.
I have a question myself.
Yes.
In earlier presentation, you said mechanical editing should be absolved of all the biases, be it racial biases, be it political biases, whatever biases we have. That is part of that is part of the language editing. Yeah. Okay.
Not mechanical editing.
So you also okay. So you also said that the work of a copy editor is to look into the quality of the author's writing as well as the importance of that article is. So how does this two stand in the scope of language editing?
The second part of your question, the audio was slightly unclear. You said two things. One was?
You said that language editing or mechanical editing, it should be absolved of all the biases. Whatever biases does the copy editor has, he should be absolved of it. But you also said that
not the copy editor, the text. The text will have the language might have that bias. Like in medical literature, suppose people tend to, generally people tend to use the term diabetic. Okay, or maybe demented or something like that, but that is very wrong. That is simply not acceptable. It has to be a person with diabetes or a diabetes patient. So because that disease or condition does not define a whole individual, right? Like a dementia, person with a dementia must not ever be described as demented. It is supposed very, thought to be very derogatory. So if an author uses that term, usually experienced authors rarely use it. But if at all if you find it, then you must change it. So suppose,
but if we look into the social sciences discourse, we cannot be absolved of all these biases, right?
No, not at all. It's not our responsibility to be as copy editors. You can be whatever kind of individual in your private life or whatever. That is not a part of your as a professional. When you're supposed to edit something, you have to rid the material of these kind of biases, racial bias, or suppose sexist bias, like chairman. You don't use that word anymore, chairman. Okay, it has to be chairperson. So that kind of sexist language is also, not favored. So you have to take care of that.
But if, say, I am writing a paper on on representation of animals in a particular literature.
Yeah.
And if I myself practice meat eating, so
Yeah.
isn't it unethical? My professional life and my personal life are in clash.
Yeah. So that is something that the acquisition editor, the journal, the peer review process say, if they know that if you're openly saying that you're a meat eater or something, and then again you write about this, then that conflict will be taken care of at an earlier stage of the publication process, not as a copy editor, because a copy editor might say that, okay, this probably has gone undetected till this stage, so I might actually tell the author or the editor that this looks something that needs to be taken care of before it goes to print, so I might highlight it.
So what do you
It's not my responsibility.
What is your personal opinion then? If I'm writing, if my research is on animal representation, and if I myself practice meat eating, so what is your personal opinion? Should I completely
I don't
my
I don't really understand the meaning of representation, but you hear talking about, even in political theory, I've come across a political theory paper which said that animals should have something like human rights, and which, somebody like Bob Marley sang about long time back, things like that. So these are all ideas. So ideas are always, it'll depend in what context you're writing them, and basically a text, if you want to write something and if you want to self-publish, then you can always write whatever. Now you have all kinds of hate literature, and that's big business now, people writing all kinds of hate. So maybe that there's an audience for it, all these conspiracy theorists and all. So, but your point is, as a profession, if somebody asks you to edit a hate literature, you might at the least say that, okay, you pay me double and don't mention my name, I'll do the editing for you. Okay. Because it's against my ethics. So, or you can simply not do it.
Okay, so thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah, welcome.
Coordinator has a few questions from the chat box.
Yeah, okay.
So,
Yeah.
the question is, can you tell me about a time where you managed the production process of a publication, including design, layout, and content quality before a deadline? The question is from Gunakantu Bonia.
Okay, so basically we do not do the design bit and anything. We just do the editing of the text, and it is mainly journal articles. So a journal article will have a abstract, a short précis of the article, basically the main text and references, and also I'm not sure if you're familiar with scholarly literature, how a journal article might look like, but most doctoral people who are doing research and all will know about it. So it is basically that kind of work that we do. Or otherwise, once in a while, if somebody approaches me on a private level to do some editing of that kind of, some informal material, I do that. But usually we don't usually do that. So especially what you want to know about design and all, this is a separate area. Copy editing is just about the text itself, and the elements in it, like figures, tables, or stuff like that. It's more of some formal literature, basically, not informal. Yeah.
Okay, I have one more question, sir.
Yeah.
What about the plagiarism part? Is
Plagiarism.
it the responsibility of the copy editor to check the plagiarism, or?
No, it's not actually. No, it's not. We don't usually cross-check for plagiarism. So I think the kind of publishers that we work for, the journals itself, they're quite well-known journals. So the peer review process, much before that, I'm sure the plagiarism part gets taken care of.
So Manjil said
কোনোবাই অসমীয়াত সুধিলে অসমীয়াটো ক'ব পাৰো so
অসমীয়াত সুধিলে অসমীয়াটো সুধিব পাৰা কোনোবাই যদি সুধিব বিচাৰিছে
in the field of maths, it is expected that the author do a minimum level of copy editing themselves. How does this compare with other
yes. In the
field of mathematics, sir?
Yes, yes. So basically, math editing yeah. So what happens is in math editing, we don't usually make changes. As a copy editor, we will look for, sometimes there is an open parenthesis or an open square bracket in an equation, but the closing one is missing. So of course, for the reader, it won't be legible. The equation is basically there's something wrong because you don't know what is multiplied with what or what is divided by. Just the basic maths that we learn even in college level. So because when it comes to doctoral level maths and all, even if you're a doctorate in maths yourself, you shouldn't be changing the math in an article. So if you find something missing or if there is some inconsistency, the way a variable was presented, if it's a vector, then it should be in bold italic. If it's a matrix or a vector, it should be in bold italic. If it's a variable that keeps taking different values, it has to be in italic. Light face is like not bold. So these kind of specifications are there, like what do you call a scientific convention. So basically, as a copy editor, you ought to know the basic scientific convention. And then if you are working for a maths journal, so that journal will have its own specific guidelines. Sometimes some authors will be using punctuation at the end of every display. Like you have a displayed equation. Displayed equation is one which is a freestanding equation in the middle of text that appears. Sometimes you have an equation, and then the next line you will have where x is so and so, y is so and so. So this kind of explanation is usually preceded by a comma. So some publishers will say that their equations must use a punctuation. Some will say that no, we don't use any punctuation. We'll keep it, just clean, no punctuation. They don't want a punctuation. So there will be style for that. So you cannot be inconsistent. Suppose if in one equation you have a punctuation, in the next one you don't have. So as a copy editor, you need to check that. And something else in maths is, suppose you have these summation symbols, if you remember from school, summation or integration symbols, where you have limits, like there's an integration symbol and limit on top and bottom. So if this equation is appearing in a running text in the middle of a sentence, but not freestanding, so then the limits have to be side limits. You cannot use what is called a top-bottom limit. So that takes too much of typographic space. So as a copy editor, you need to identify that and tell the typesetter to set it correctly. So this kind of edits we make in math.
So again, Manju sir, ask again.
Yeah.
Can you give me some examples of scientists who you personally feel have a good writing style for a general audience?
I don't really know because, we work for a lot of different, like, what do you call authors? Suppose today there will be a different group of authors, tomorrow another group of authors. So, and I work for different fields over the years. So I would not know any specific because you keep getting every day. We are like, I started my day today with an article from East European Politics and Societies. That is called EEPS. It's it was a study on the political situation in post-war Poland. Then right after that, I might take up an article from geriatric medicine. This will be my article after this session. And then late in the night might be another article, and I know one article is waiting from shoulder surgery. So this will be 3 articles at least. I know I'm going to work on. So these will be all different areas. So you know how deep you need to go and how not. So you cannot go very deep, but then you must be sure that the comprehension should be there. So you can understand sentences to be able to edit for grammar and sense. The basic comprehension is there, yeah. Tell me.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions?
Question from Imdad Khan.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Will copy editors incur international intellectual property rights sanction?
Not at all. Not at all. Because basically what you are doing as a copy editor is, see, you have an understanding with a publisher that you're not going to share that unedited material with anybody, and it all works on trust basically. Because if I fool him, even if I give away that material to somebody else, this author who steals this work from somebody else is going to get caught anyway. Today, any Google search with double quotation marks will get you, that piece of identical text, whatever way it is published. So everybody is going to get caught, if not today, then tomorrow. So I don't want to lose my job by giving a portion of an article to somebody in my family, stealing it from an author and then lose my own job. So that I think the publishers also know very well that something like this will not happen. And basically, in this profession, the best part is that every person who works in this field in academic publishing, they're all kind of knowledge seeking, knowledge oriented people. So we never have come across any situation where we work on a book or a journal and we did not get paid, or or that somebody did not treated us poorly or something. So it has never happened like that. So it is in that sense, it is a very good profession, because I keep hearing from people, a lot of times people ask me, oh, how is it working online? I heard people don't get paid, or you actually have to pay your employer first to get job or something. So that is not at all the case in copyediting. Yeah.
Thank
I
you.
hope I answered your question. Yeah.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Sir and ma'am, thank
Hello.
you very much for your very informative lecture.
Okay, thank
And
you.
I think you have inspired very young minds, because I
Thank
have
you.
gone through the chat box, and
Okay.
many of the participants, they are asking like, even if they are not from the English language section,
Yes,
so
yes.
even if they belong to the science stream, how
Yes.
can they become a professional, like copy editing? How can do that? So
Yeah.
they just
So-
wanted to know it.
Right. So see, even me, I don't have a formal English education. I mean, I did not study English as such. So basically, two very basic things are like that. You must have a good hold over English, and you can only have that if you are a good reader. So, and the kind of literature that you should read is, I would say if you can access some good second-hand. Today, now in this day, you can actually buy online. You can buy subscription, say National Geographic, or even a good newspaper. Like if you subscribe to the New York Times, nowadays it costs only 60 rupees per week. So 240 rupees per week of good standard English if you read. Per month, sorry, 240 rupees per month. So it is really worth your money, rather than you eat 1 kg less chicken and get so much of English. So which is definitely make you enough well employed later on to buy truckloads of chicken. So
Okay.
so I think and maybe it's I used to do a lot of crosswords. So crosswords also help initially. Maybe cryptic crossword, not just simple crosswords. So, and nowadays you have online forums where you can actually learn. We learned on our own. So now you can actually learn through forums, and even
We
for
learned
copy.
most of on this job.
Yeah, the copywriting itself. I was talking about the crossword bit. Yeah, good literature every day one should read. Every day some science, and if you want to work in this particular profession, then I would suggest you to subscribe to the Hindu, because Hindu has very good English, and you have some articles on science every week. Or I have seen in this online news source, the independent news agency called The Wire. I don't know if most of people must be aware of The Wire news. So in The Wire, the science page is very good. So I've come across a lot of that. And even if if you're interested in English and science, and you don't really enjoy this scholarly copy editing, you can always become a science writer. Like I was talking about this to your principal and your sir also, that if you like to read science, then you need not actually work as a copy editor. You can actually be a journalist, like a science journalist. So you can start blogging on your own. You can read online sources on science. Then you can start writing. Suppose you are curious about butterflies, or you are curious about spiders. Suppose I remember an article on spider that I read in a National Geographic maybe 15 years back, that spiders have 7 kinds of silk. At that time, they found out that they had 7 kinds of silk, and to make their web, they first make a Y, which is the strongest silk, and then different varieties of silk. So they have a silk that is oily. They have a silk that is the strength is 7 times that of the highest, the strongest steel. So with that, they make the Y. Then they have that oily kind of silk, which they would then rub on their, legs and arms. And then using that, they will slide on that Y and they'll make the rest of the web. So these are things that if you read, then you remember all throughout your life. You never forget. Maybe if you watch TV. So I think the most important advice I would like to give is do not watch too much of audiovisual stuff. Audiovisual is fine a certain part of the day, but avoid maybe more than half an hour or so. In the times of lockdown, people have stopped bothering their kids, trying to keep them away from their devices. People have given up. I read in the newspapers and all. But it is best not to watch too much. And even if you watch YouTube or something, you should always put the autoplay off. Never put the autoplay on, because all these algorithms were, built to sell as a commercial purpose. So if you start watching stuff, anything like news or anything of the sort, then it will keep giving you a certain news of similar kind. But as a curious person, it is not really helpful. It is not helpful to be reading the same and similar stuff which YouTube will provide you. So you should always put the autoplay off and then search on your own. Then go to different bloggers. There are lots of dedicated bloggers who really research their stuff and they write online. There was if there is time, I will tell you another short story. There was a dead pigeon in our balcony. So the pigeon was dying and it was starting to smell. So I was trying to look up on the internet how to decay the dead carcass fast so that it does not smell too much. What can I buy from the market? So then I came across some sites by zoologists. So these zoology students in the US, what they were doing is like they were experimenting with different kind of ways to decompose these birds and common like rodents and all, so that they could collect the skeleton and they would again make the skeleton, build it like a dinosaur, like in a museum you see. So these kind of people, there are lots of different kinds of people who write a lot of hard things about life, science that is related very strongly to life. So one can learn a lot nowadays if you spend your time well.
Okay, so thank you so much, sir, for your very informative session. And I think the participants have benefited from it. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for this session.
Okay. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, please tell me.
We are almost coming to the last part of this. But no, before going to the last one, then I have an interesting question. That is, especially I am growing envious of your profession now.
Yeah.
So you were staying at home.
Yes.
Going out.
Yes.
You all stop on your own time. You'll take your own time. You have your own routine.
Yes.
Now, how to mix your work and other home activities? Especially Anannya, I think you have to show us something. How you are actually managing your inside your home. Do you take yourself to the kitchen or you walk to the kitchen within your house? Will you please just the light of it actually?
Yeah. So we had actually prepared a small.
It's kind of a stress buster for us. Working on this, reading for long hours, sitting in front of computers is very tedious.
Good.
So we thought of doing something else, something creative, so that we for some refreshment actually. I do like a lot of cooking and baking, and he does some photography also. And both of us spend a lot of time in the kitchen. So I'll just show a slide of my cooking sessions.
Sure.
Yeah, these are.
Can you see?
This is the first slide. Then. Okay, these 4 cakes.
I baked 6 cakes in a week. There was a special occasion, so we had prepared. We shipped these cakes to Assam actually, to Guwahati. These four of these cakes, and I baked 6 cakes in that week. First time.
Then this is a small intro. So
I have been doing serious baking since 7-8 years now, but I started my baking since childhood actually.
since 7-8 years, it
has
more,
become serious hobby. Yeah.
skill intensive.
Yeah.
So these
are the machines I have.
in the kitchen.
Gradually, I'm upgrading my machines and ovens and everything. All the kitchen equipment.
So this is the egg white.
Yeah, this is egg.
Okay. So this one uses. I'll just explain the scientific part.
Because baking is a science, and he'll explain it to you.
So this one has the one on the left. You see, it has a whisk, and the white part is actually
only the egg.
Egg. Just the egg white.
No egg white. This is only egg.
This is egg. Okay. This is raw. No? You use the temperature thing. Yeah.
Raw.
So for using the egg raw like this, you need to make sure that it reaches a certain temperature to kill the salmonella, the possibility of infection. So it has to be done till she has to heat it on hot water, put the bowl on top of hot water, and it has to be heated till
160 degree Fahrenheit.
160 degree Fahrenheit. So she has a special temperature probe that is put there, and once it reaches the temperature, it starts beeping. So
after that, I have to take it out from there and
from the heat,
put it in the machine.
And then put it in the machine to whisk.
This is the machine I have.
On the right.
Right.
So that is the kitchen machine, and there's
this
a
is part of our kitchen corner. These are the recipe hanging on the top. I follow recipes, the printouts of the recipe. Yeah, I follow each and every step, and measurement. You have to be very in baking. You have to be very precise. You cannot lose anything. Yeah, you cannot miss.
These are 3.
This is the oven. These are 3 cakes I was baking for a 3-layered cake. On the right, this is the oven. And this is called Black Forest cake. Lot of fruits inside, whipping cream and this fruit.
This was the 3-layered cake.
This is a 3-layered cake. This is a 3-layered cake.
This is in coffee
This
flavor.
is mocha flavored coffee, the left one, white chocolate. This is vanilla latte
On the right.
coffee cake. I follow some bloggers from Canada and US. So these cakes are not available here. This is a bun cake. This cake pan itself is a different, the shape of the pan is different. So that's why the shape of the cake is like this.
It takes that shape. No?
Yeah.
This is a tart.
This is a tart. It's called fruit tart, and this filling is called lemon curd. This is a kind of dessert. It's very popular in France.
That is fruit with blueberries and
blackberries
and raspberries and all. That's available in the winter here.
These are cupcakes and muffins. This is carrot cupcake, and this is choco chip cupcakes. This is coffee machine. He has.
Okay, yeah. This is. I did not know this would be on the slide. So this is our coffee machine. So we all.
He drinks a lot of coffee. He drinks a lot of coffee. Yeah. Coffee keeps him going into this copy editing.
Yeah, staying late night. She makes homemade ice cream also. So this is the ice cream machine. So what you can see is like with the strawberry pieces, that's a strawberry ice cream. And there was one coffee ice cream, and this the bottom one is vanilla, I think. Yeah. So the ice creams are especially good.
These days we are missing because we keep inviting friends every now and then.
So we are missing our friends, from the lockdown. This is a collage.
These are some of the cakes I have baked so far. And this is, this whole package was for my sister's birthday, who lives nearby here.
Okay, yeah. There was one cake, then some noodles. And,
I made this cake for my nephews so that they can gift this to their mom.
okay, yeah, that's why it's
written Mummy.
Yeah, on their behalf. Yeah, you'll get to see them. So once after that, we'll divulge who she was.
Yeah, who she was.
So she's going to make a
Online store very
online
soon.
store
Planning to
soon.
start something.
Planning to sell if she gets when people contact her for more
Lot of
cakes
people
and all,
are lot of people are suggesting me, but there is one special person. I'll not
who has
divulge
been-
his name right now. He is right after me only to start something. He's been after me for a long time.
So that was the last.
Last.
Okay. So I'll just come back to the video.
Hope you
Okay,
like
so-
the slide.
It was nice. So many participants were showing that they'll be definitely delicious. We would like to taste them.
Okay.
Thank you. Then, I think we are coming to the last part. Thank you for showing your other side of your profession.
Thank you. Yeah. Thanks so much for this initiative. It was really good. Like, and yeah, we want to talk about that bit. I mean, we did not discuss that about that internship thing in your college. So we will have this kind of a what usually people call a public-private partnership kind of thing. So
Yeah,
I mean,
we can.
academic.
Now,
Yeah.
To our participants, we can, if our participants are serious enough, we can start a kind of program here
Yes.
in our college in
Yes.
collaboration with Ratul Hazarika and Anannya Borgohain
Yes.
on copy editing, and I think such kind of a course or such kind of some kind of internship course
Yes.
will lead to some internship with you. Perhaps
Yes. Yes.
can guide some of our participants, serious
Yes.
participants who are really serious enough to take up this profession.
Yes.
And I think we can, our participants can contact us so that we can, to keep in contact with you also, so that we
Yes.
can have a kind of some kind of a program, right?
Yeah, very soon we will work out a plan. So initially we will probably, we'll sit down with you and over video meeting, we can discuss how to go ahead. Maybe if you want to train en bloc, a certain 20-30 people right away, and then take a test, or if you prefer that we take the test first and then train. So you can take a better call, I think. So because I can share some material and based on that, if you think that it would be a little difficult for people to straight away take the test,
Right.
without the training.
Some
So-
kind of study materials will be needed. For
Yeah,
that to get prepared.
yeah. So based on that study material and say a month or so of reading, how well they could absorb that that course. Based on that, we can judge their skill and their level of understanding. So maybe that would be a better approach rather than giving the test first up, because the test might be a little difficult for them at this stage. Because even
It will be a nice proposition, and I would like to request our participants to keep contact with us, and we will, I think, have a kind of group of 20 to 30 participants, and then we'll
Yeah, and-
provide the study material,
yeah.
and then there will be a test. A smaller group will be maybe given chance for internship.
Yes, and for the internship, I would like to say that because a lot of people I've heard, a lot of people from science background and all were trying. So one can be from any background, that does not matter. It is the holdover English which is important, and
Right.
reading habit. So people who think they are really interested in this line of work, number one. Number two, if they seriously have a good habit of reading and not lying about it. One has to have a good habit, otherwise you won't be able to manage, the kind of complex stuff that you will get to do later on, or you will find it boring at one stage because you have to sit for hours to finish an article sometimes. So if you have a good habit of reading and and you really like the aspect of this job, then I think we can encourage those students. And it will be very nice to be able to help, some students find a vocation in life through our support.
Thank you very much, and definitely we'll be working on this.
Yeah.
Right. Now, I'd like to thank you all our participants. We have come to the last part of this session today. I'd like to offer my gratitude on behalf of Lakhimpur Girls College to Ratul Hazarika and Anannya Borgohain for sparing a valuable time, sharing your time with us.
No, thank you so much.
Experience.
Thank you so much.
We really enjoyed it.
I hope.
And our participants who are, in fact, so much interest, who express their interest and have made this session successful. And of course, I must thank our technical team.
Yes.
Dr. Borgohain, he has been here, of course, right now he is not there. He was Dr. Parama Datta is there. Devishan Terang and Magdaf Sunwal, they have been constantly working on this entire setup and organizing this webinar. And I thank, on behalf of Lakhimpur Girls College family, I thank them all. And definitely I will have to thank our principal sir, who has been always there encouraging us. And I request him to say the final words of this session today.
So thank you, Ratul and Anannya, for this nice session. And it was a informative one and really scholarly one also.
I hope, thank you so much. And I hope it was, there was not much problem in comprehending, because we are not used to, describing our work at this level, usually, to people. So this was our kind of first interaction of this sort. So I hope we were clear enough, in explaining things.
So I think I should say thanks you once again for giving such a valuable time with us, despite of your heavy workload. So I thank you all. And I also thanks all the participants for joining this session. And I think the interested participants will be benefited from this.
Yes.
And with this, I would like to conclude this session.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone. Thank you to all participants who joined us for the session.
We're reading those messages.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.